All right, D&D enthusiasts, we've got a build request here for a summoner type character. How can we utilize this on the tabletop? And from the perspective of the DM, I'm going to leave the narrative and the role-playing aspects aside. I'm going to leave that up to you. Just looking at the meta, just looking at how tactically to utilize this. If I was a DM and a character was playing, what would be the optimal summoner build? What would give me the hardest time as a DM, and what would make those summons target priority? So we're kind of looking at this from a tactica level, literally trying to build an army in your pocket ready to deploy. Right away, the two character classes that are the easiest to do this would be a wizard, given the diversity of the spells, could work with sorcerer, but you're getting kind of locked in. And as you level up, you want to make sure those spells keep pace, but you could do a summoner build. Cleric, possibly, but a druid is actually extremely well suited for a summoner build, not only in what it can summon, but also the buffs, because the buffs are going to be a second part of this. That's going to take the tactica from just having more summoned bodies on the table, more miniatures and more models, always a good thing, to now making them harder for the DM to deal with. So the first thing we look at is out of combat and in combat, the duration and timing of the summons. As a dungeon master, you can choose to play with all different types of rules, all the rules in the game, some rules in the game. A lot of the rules we tend to look the other way. As a DM, I don't really keep track of food and water and travel time, because I don't want it to be an exercise in bookkeeping. I also don't always enforce weight restrictions on my players. If it's reasonable and you can carry it, I'm going to assume you have provisions to make it happen. I want to spend the maximum time adventuring. I say that because with the medium and later summons that are very, very powerful, as soon as you hit that benchmark and are able to start summoning elementals, now we get into casting time. And keeping track of how long does it actually take to cast, and in some examples, have dominion over what you've summoned. Combat could be going on while that's happening, if you're looking to cast during combat. The challenge here, of course, is you're spending your time doing that and not acting, and if it's interrupted, the spell can be negated. So as a DM, as a dungeon master, that's what I'm going to be looking to do. Duration outside of combat. Can you cast and summon? I mean, combat sometimes happens. Sometimes you get taken by surprise. But there are times where you can control and you kind of know, hey, we're going to be going into combat. You control the combat. We're out of combat. We're in role-playing mode. You sneak up on the abandoned tower. The rogue does a little bit of spotting, and you find out, hey, there's some bandits in there. We're going to engage them. Well, we're not into initiative order yet. You cast your spells, you summon up your pocket friends, you're ready to go. So casting inside and outside of combat. Outside of combat, looking for ways through feats, if you're using feats and magic items and gear, to extend the duration of the spell, to extend the duration of the summons. And in combat, if necessary, you want both, because you never know, you might be taken by surprise. A way to speed up combat options. How can we speed up the spell casting times? It's not always possible, but that's where we're going to look. Second to this, and this is now where the druid comes in, buffs. Are there ways, and the cleric can do it too, are there ways to buff your summons? Either getting them out before combat, pumping them up, getting them all bane, buffing them up going into combat, or first wave summons, send them in, buff. The other opportunity and the other challenge with those buffs and how they augment is the chaining of summons. It's natural to look as you level up, what is your most powerful summon? A difference between summoning a wild snake or a wild animal at the lower levels and summoning the dire version of it, and then summoning woodland creatures, and then summoning elementals, or as a magic user, summoning elementals, and then moving on to summoning different beings from the different planes. That gets more and more powerful. What we want to do initially, so using it tactically, you want to overload the DM. You want to overload the DM in that throwing down more summons. This is why simple summons like summoning a bunch of skeletons, even at the mid levels, weak hit dice, not a lot of damage. Essentially, if I hit it once, it's going to crumble, right? But if you get those out onto the table, now we go to initiative just through luck of rolling of the dice. They don't have initiative modifiers, depending on what you're summoning, although some do. The lower stuff, not really significantly. Just by virtue of you having more members of the party now, so to speak, if they get to go first, you can utilize them tactically to wall off areas, to set up attacks of opportunity, to force me to attack them, to deal with them. So often what we'll see with the summoner is if you summon 5 skeletons and I knock down 3 first turn, 2 second turn, you look and say, well, they didn't do any good. They didn't do any damage, right? But those were not attacks going against the fighter, the barbarian, the dwarven berserker. I might still miss, but if I do hit, it's a way of absorbing and mitigating literal damage on the frontline fighters. That too, being able to manipulate the initiative order, that too is really, really important and really, really massive. Final subnote to make it as challenging and as hard as possible. This is where you're going to have to look. This is where we're going to get a little creative and see what we have. Summons, increasing speed, increasing buffs, increasing duration. Having tiered summons, meaning get your minions and your wastoids out first, the disposable stuff, then bring in the heavy hitters. And somewhere in there, crowd control. Are there summons, perfect example, having the ability to blast a web spell at the lower to mid-tier levels, and then summon a bunch of spiders. They're immune to web. Are there ways that you can throw out mobility crowd control against the DM, just blanket out an area and then throw the summons into there, and they're immune to it. We see stuff like if you have, here's a good combo, skeletons, lower level, throw in Stinking Cloud, just blast that out, fill that up, send them in. There's a lot of options from that perspective. So looking at the summoner build, yes, absolutely look at what stuff you can bust out and throw on the table. But also look at spells that complement, that buff, that area control. Those are going to make a massive, massive difference. That's the difference between just having a fun time, throwing down some miniatures, and now tactically utilizing them. Forcing me as the DM to deal with it, because now I'm in that duality. If I don't deal with your summons, even if they're not powerful, then they're going to be running amok, they're going to be hitting me. And look, you throw down 5 or 6 skeletons, or you summon a bunch of dire rats, they attack, somebody's going to roll a 20. Someone's going to roll a 20 somewhere on something. So I don't necessarily want to just walk through and let myself get beat up on there, even if I'm controlling an ogre. You might roll a 20. You never know. If I've got my vampire lord, you could roll a 20. You never know. But you're also taking away from the fact that I can either beat on the summons or I can beat on the party. If I beat on the party, the summons run all over me. If I beat on the summons, the party runs all over me. If I beat on the party, the summons run all over on me. Give your DM, and I love being a DM, give your DM a false choice. That, in my opinion, that is the power of the summoner.